All right. Welcome to the next episode of Voice AI podcast, where we discuss the future of voice AI. Today, I'm super excited to host Arpan Podduturi, who is the VP of Product at Samsara. Welcome, Arpan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, quickly about Samsara, and feel free to correct me if I did get anything wrong. I use my OpenAI summary here, but I think it usually is spot on. So Samsara is a public enterprise software and IoT company helping organizations manage fleets, vehicles, equipment, and frontline operations. Its platform includes telematics, AI dash cameras, equipment tracking, driver safety, maintenance, and workflow tools. It's been founded in 2015, headquartered in SF, and trading on New York State Stock Exchange.
You nailed it.
All right, awesome. Well, it wasn't me. I can't get the credit for this, but great. So, Arpan, like, I really find the use case super interesting, right? Like, how is voice AI applied at Samsara? And it wasn't very clear for me in the beginning. I did some research. Now it's a bit clearer, but let's dive into that if you're open. Right?
Yeah. So I'm happy to sort of lead off here. So, I think the thing to understand is that 80% of the global workforce is actually frontline workers. And so while all the frontiers and all of the, biggest companies of the world are building AI for consumers and for white collar office workers, there's this massive pool of people who are out in the field working on oil refineries, on the tarmac, driving a truck, doing physical labor, who could really benefit from having a super intelligent being that they have access to. And so that's the target for us. That's who we build for. And it's really interesting because it feels like we're kind of doing it all on our own, and that's been fun.
Yeah. I was looking at the Samsara product line or the platform, right, that you have. So you provide, like, it's, from what I understand, like, it's a full sort of platform that provides these fleet telematics, like real-time GPS tracking, fuel compliance, routing, and then driver safety, equipment management. It's a pretty big platform, I guess. So what is exactly where the voice AI? Is it with the frontline workers? Is that the main use case for voice AI?
Yeah, exactly. The main use case is people driving vehicles who have to be, hands-on, eyes on the road, and whose days are pretty unpredictable, right? So imagine yourself, as a frontline driver, you have a variety of stops. When you get into a certain geofence, you have specific last mile instructions. Maybe there's different traffic patterns that are changing ahead. Maybe you need to be rerouted. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And it's traditionally been something that we ask drivers to pick up a phone to be able to respond to. And we also ask humans to make all those calls. And we have all this data. It exists inside of Samsara. It's proprietary. We have the hardware that generates this data. And so the next evolution was just very naturally, well, how do we get agents to work proactively on behalf of these organizations to make these calls directly and to reach drivers in the field?
Yeah. So in the past, there were, I guess, like there was a call center type of function where folks would monitor where the drivers are, and if, like, the route needs to be changed or something must be changed, they would call them through, I guess, your systems, and then driver would pick up the phone and talk to the human. And so, like, you are basically, is it correct to say that you're replacing the call center with voice AI, or augmenting, or
Yeah, I think it's really augmenting. One of the clearest use cases we have, I think it's every 7 seconds on the job. As a frontline worker gets injured, every 13 minutes, a crash happens on our roadways in the United States that kills somebody. So that's where the safety aspect becomes like massively important. So we have, local models that run with external facing lenses and internal facing lenses. One of the detections we have is driver drowsiness. So you can imagine driver drowsiness peaks between the hours of 11 and 4 a.m., right? And trucks are driving through the night. Dispatchers are not sitting up at night between the hours of 11 and 4 a.m., at least in most organizations. And so it's expanding the coverage. You now have AI that intervenes for a driver who's blinking heavily or their head is nodding in a suspicious way, and we can intervene and say, hey, we noticed that you're getting sleepy. Can I talk you through until you get to the next rest stop? And they can just have conversations. There should be someone who's there who can get them there. And these are the things that we feel like, man, this is like life-saving stuff that feels like it was impossible, just a year ago. So
Yeah, this is such an incredible use case. I've never heard of it. So to just reiterate for me, there is a dash camera that has two cameras. One, and I guess it's trying to detect dangerous situations in front of the truck as well. And then, but in the same time, it's looking at the driver. And so you have local like video models that will detect these things and then trigger voice AI and to keep them awake and to entertain or just like maybe recommend to stop and to make a pause and things like that. Wow, amazing.
yeah.
Okay.
We also have a whole coaching program, right? So if you imagine these drivers that are out in the field, a thing that really changes behavior is coaching. And it changes it like drives material behavior change. And we've built AI avatars who are effectively digital coaches who will look across your entire drive, and at the end of your shift they'll say, hey, you drove better for these reasons. We're working on, close following. You did, several miles of perfect driving between this stretch and this stretch. That really contextualizes the entire driver experience. All of this is like, again, voice at the center of it all. And this is actually a visual avatar, but these can be delivered through the camera. They can be delivered through the driver app that Samsara provides. So all these things are driving down safety events and making our roadways safer.
I guess also driving gamification makes their life a bit more interesting, gamified, right?
Yeah,
With all the data
exactly.
you can show to them. Yeah.
Yep.
And so, Arpan, like, I imagine, like, how do you guys think about why is voice interface so important? I mean, I understand the hands-free part of it. That's clear. But I think there is more than that, right?
Yeah. So if you think about the kind of evolution of our product, it started with those local edge models who were detecting danger or policy violations, things like that, right? Picking up a mobile phone, vaping, whatever it is. And what the system originally was built to do was beep at a driver. And oftentimes, we have different severity thresholds, and a driver gets a beep. Sometimes they don't know why. Maybe they're following a little closely, but it's not clear. And so the system is really evolving to give drivers more context. Some fleets right now, because the cost of fuel has risen so much, have put really strict guardrails around idling. You don't want your vehicle idling for more than 5 minutes. So we would send them a beep and we would say, hey, the driver has to kind of intuit that or figure that out. Now we can set up any trigger. We can have the voice agent call in through the existing hardware that lives in the truck, and we can say, hey, is now a good time to talk? You've been parked on the roadway. Can I check in on you? Can I see what's going on? Your policy is to not idle for more than 5 minutes. Like, do you want to talk to somebody about this, or do you want to turn off your truck, or do you want to get moving? And it's just a much more comprehensive, human centered way of coaching drivers and running this program. And it doesn't replace the human. It really does act as that first front line, just like in I'm sure all the use cases that you're working through with escalated support and all of that stuff. Like, but we can automate so much of this such that drivers get answers immediately. It's way better customer service for them, and they can speak to humans only when they need to and when that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. And would like let this idle use case, right? Keeping the car idle, would someone actually call in before voice AI, right? Would someone call like a human call in and talk to them about this before?
100%. Yeah. So they would be staring at a dashboard, getting an event and saying, "Oh, I have to call this driver, pick up the phone, takes 5 minutes." It's just, it feels, now that we kind of work through every step in that chain, it feels like, well, obviously an agent would do this so much better and faster and more comprehensively across a fleet of, you can imagine, many thousand vehicles running at once. And so it's just a scale problem that agents are uniquely equipped to solve.
Absolutely. And it's also not the most pleasant conversation for a human to do. Like
Yeah.
it's like would you want to do this all day long? Probably not. You would want to focus on more interesting things, right? The problems and so on. And are there like use cases that sort of that are new use cases that have like expanded with voice AI for your product, like something that you couldn't do with human call center, right? But now you can do. I mean, I understand, for example, the detection and conversation. It might be one of these, but are there any others that comes to your mind?
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, let's like kind of take a large fleet, 3,000, 5,000 trucks going at once, right? And they're making a few drop offs per day going in and out of yards. And each of those tasks have specific instructions. Now, a team of dispatchers would historically call those drivers, follow them on a map, call them, and say, hey, when you get into this plant, make sure you go to door number one. It's all the way at the end, and talk to Bob and tell Bob these things need to happen, or these things need to get unloaded. That all gets automated now. You can you can have specific instructions that are geofenced. As soon as this specific truck goes into the yard, fire a voice agent to call the driver, replay the information, make sure that they're all clear, and then you multiply that by 5,000 trucks that are going across a fleet, and it's like, think about how much time is saved. Like, and these are the incremental wins for fleets and physical operations companies that are running on pretty thin margins right now. Like, these, every one of those time savings turn into real ROI. And this is why we are so excited about this, because our customers are, there's obviously this whole conversation about AI and ROI and all that stuff and costs. Like, ours are very measurable. Like, these use cases are extremely and directly tied to real customer outcomes. And so when we price this stuff and we talk about it, like, our customers are like, great, this isn't some open-ended consumption-based thing where I'm paying for stuff and I don't totally know. Yeah, I'm seeing some productivity gains here and there, but these are like really concrete workflows that they are designing or in our own agent studio, that are tailored to their business, that are triggered around their events and around their proprietary data. So that's where it gets really powerful.
Very cool. Very cool. So Arpan, like you guys have probably started building this a while ago, right?
Yeah.
You probably started very early with very different kind of voice AI models. And can you talk about like how this recent, I think, in the last 3 years, I think have changed significantly in the industry, how this impacted your engineering and product capabilities, right? How would you think about the evolution of voice AI, how it impacted your roadmap and everything?
Yeah. I mean, I think, we've seen so many productivity gains internally. Just from a customer facing perspective, we're still learning about what's working, I think, in the field. Our hardware is very specific. Dash cams lack echo cancellation, so the mic kind of mutes while the agent talks. It's kind of in walkie-talkie mode, right? And so we have like an interruption problem, like a barge in problem that we need to kind of work through. we're kind of discovering that the open-ended conversations aren't as good as the highly structured conversations. We go through all the traces and we see when people run generic freeform voice prompts, like the end result is not great right now. So we have to work through a bunch of these issues, but we're sort of like, I would say, like titrating the experience right now. And it's like every week, the underlying models get better, the latency improves, we find ways in which we can improve call quality by tightening the structure. But there's still so much to work on. Like, our agents do not share context with one another today. And that sort of like shows up in interesting ways, right? Like, we have agents that are interrupting each other when they call. We don't have an orchestration layer built yet. So there's a ton that we need to do to make this. I would say, like, the dream is that all these agents orient around a driver. And that driver, we understand their driving context, their safety goals, their safety policies in their organization, their route, the whole thing. And we give them that comprehensive view that they would understand. And that's the kind of direction that we're moving in. Right now, we've stood up lots of agents that kind of independently fire and do a great job with a very narrow use case, but it's not a comprehensive, holistic experience for the end user. So that's the kind of broader direction we're moving in.
Yeah, super interesting. And if that's okay to share, right? Is the voice actually running on that local hardware, or is it streaming to
It's
your
stream. Yeah,
streaming,
it's
right?
yeah.
Okay. So when we say like the agents interrupt each other, you mean like the same driver can talk to multiple agents at the same time?
Yeah, so you can imagine we have like a safety agent that calls in because
Yeah.
of the drowsiness, and then there's another construction zone ahead, and the
Okay.
organization is configured to alert the driver when there's a construction zone ahead because your speed has to drop. We don't have the right orchestration in place right now to prioritize and to say, actually, safety agents always take priority. And so therefore, let's go in that direction. And these are things that, like, we're discovering like last week, and we're like, oh, okay, there's some collisions happening. Like, we need to build this thing out right now. And so the iteration cycles are really tight and the product's getting better quickly. But it's just incredible what you learn when you're going through the traces and listening to these calls. The other interesting thing that we've discovered is, like, this is a real, like, human problem for us. Like, you just, like, imagine yourself as a driver. Like, you get hired, you're like in the truck, you're driving, and you think this thing is exists to keep you safe, right? It's like telling you about, like, things moving ahead of you and detections that it's seeing inward, and suddenly it just starts talking. And you're like, what is going on? And so, we've been really aggressive here because we think it is so vital to safety and to our
Yeah.
mission. But we're sort of wrestling with the whole, these are, like, many thousand person organizations who have different levels of comfort with AI or different feelings about it. And some of them are like, don't treat me like I'm in kindergarten. They literally talk back to the camera. And others are like, oh, this is cool. Like, can you tell me the Red Sox score? Like, it's like, so it's just trying to decide, like, how do we introduce the technology in a way that builds trust and builds that kind of driver connection so that they actually get all the benefits out of this.
Incredible. Like how to personalize, right? Also, so that like that this could be, I don't know if that would fit your product roadmap or not, but it's like their friend, because it's such a lonely sort of journey, right? Happening all day long. And like if you can help them to not feel alone, or like this also a safety thing, right? So like if you personalize it for them, they will become more sort of comfortable, yeah, talking to it. Very interesting. I can imagine all kinds of problems actually in this use case. Look, I mean, in the last 3-4 years, I think like the voice AI tech has been evolving over like things such as echo cancellation, noise cancellation. And then if I ask my friends, a year ago or 2 years ago, like in the turn taking was a big problem. And then barging has been a big problem. Latency has been a big problem. I think like as an industry, we keep solving, not entirely. I mean, none of this is properly solved, frankly, even today. But so we are, we keep solving, and then like speech to text, accuracy, like noise and other things, accents, and so on. And then text to speech, obviously so many problems, right? And then what you talked about, like orchestration. Now I think this is something that a lot of people are working on, but it's not solved, of course, right? I mean, there are so many specific use cases that it needs to be solved. Look, I think you have seen all of this and you're seeing all of this, so that's why this is a very interesting conversation. If we think about the future, right? Let's say 2 years from now or 3 years from now, how do you see, like, what is this perfect world of voice AI
Yeah.
that, from at least Samsara's perspective, is like, okay, like I really feel this voice interface is now nailed. It has replaced this old interface now. And how would you describe that state?
Yeah, I think we in our product experience today have built many different kind of siloed agents that each deliver value in very a narrow sense. And I think they're oriented around kind of the dispatcher. I think the jump is to orient them around the end user such that someone who is a frontline worker feels like they have super intelligence, hands free way for whatever task they're doing, whether that is, you know, building a bridge to, making a delivery to driving a catering truck on an airplane ramp, right? And so for us, that means deep personalization down to the user level, giving them the tools to kind of customize their experience and figure out like what are the other tool calls that we need to build in such that this super intelligence actually feels that way. It has guardrails based on the customer's organization, but it can answer almost any question that a driver has about their work. And I think that's the difference between commercial drivers and us, where like, their days are just so volatile. They change hour to hour, minute to minute. And for them to not have to look at a phone, not have to check their text, not have to check their email, get all the distractions that come with us, especially on the road, like that to me is the end state that we're going towards, where if you are working on a job and you need to pull out your phone and flash your camera and look at some and figure out what part you're missing, you can do that. You can then talk to the phone and have a conversation about it. You can get in your truck and you can say, hey, where do I find that part? And it'll tell you exactly where to go. Like all of this can be extremely simplified for the day-to-day worker in a way that keeps them off of their devices constantly, which is the current state of the world. So we just think it's like, unified context that brings together data across the organization, across the driver, across their voice history, across their calling history, pulls it all together and gives them that incredible leverage to do their job better and just to take some stress out of their minute to minute. So
Yeah, I can imagine like this is like Frontline first, Chat GPT, and voice first, right? This is a voice
yeah,
first. And
it has to
it's
be.
very important is to be voice first because of the specific job actually, or the environment for the frontline workers. And but designed around work, not just designed around anything. The ChatGPT is a consumer, but this is designed around their work. Voice AI assistant for work, basically.
Yeah. And it has to be, our frontline workers are working in extreme conditions, extreme cold, extreme heat,
So just
wind,
to
rain.
clarify, it's not only drivers, right?
No,
You have,
no.
oh, okay. So, okay.
It's frontline workers who are on construction sites and oil refineries, on trains, like it's all over. Sometimes they're packing food in frozen warehouses, like they're doing all kinds of jobs. And so, yes, the camera is the existing hardware that we can tap into that can power voice, but there's so much more opportunity for us to solve these use cases outside of vehicles and we're excited to do that too.
Perfect. Amazing vision, Arpan. Thank you so much for sharing this incredible I mean, I haven't heard about this use case, so on this podcast at least, right? Thanks for sharing. And it seems like you guys are nailing it on the experience and have a great vision around it. So, yeah, thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me.